Welcome to the Owning Your Sexual Self podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Main, awesome wife and dog mom for life. I'm a sex therapist turned sex coach, and I run a successful business selling relationship enhancement products. I absolutely love talking about all things sex. So you can expect this podcast to explore all things related to women's sexual health because that's what I'm here for. I'm here to help you discover and embrace what brings you pleasure so that you can own your sexual self. If that sounds good to you, then keep listening and let's fucking do this. Hey y'all, I'm back and I have another amazing guest with us today. I am so excited to have my friend and another fellow sex therapist on with me today. Today I have on Danielle Crotty, who is someone that I actually went through the sex therapy and sexual education program with through the University of Michigan. So her and I were able to connect through that program back in 2017. And I am so excited. You'll actually see here a lot of the guests that I have planned for this year are people that I did this program with, and I'm very excited to have them on to be talking about the work that they're doing today since going through this program that we all did together. So Danielle works as a sex therapist. She has a background in sex therapy as well as marriage and family therapy, and she really works to work with her people on where they're at in terms of the problems that they're experiencing. So the work that she does might encompass any sort of challenges that somebody's struggling with when it is coming to sex, having challenges with desire, reporting problems with connection with their partner, maybe erectile dysfunction, having sexual pain, reporting infidelity, anything to do with the LGBT community concerns. And her goal, again, is to always make sure that people are feeling comfortable and safe and that they're able to explore whatever that they need in that moment. So today, Danielle and I are going to be talking about what it's like working in private practice and sharing that normalcy and reality of sexual health concerns, the lack of education, and we're going to be talking about some unhealthy myths about sexual health and intimacy. So without further ado, I'm super excited to have Danielle on with us today. So welcome, Danielle. I'm so excited to have another fellow sex therapist on the podcast today. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you? I'm so excited.
I know, doing good. It seems like forever ago that we were sitting in class at University of Michigan. I'll never forget our SAR class where we just basically watched street porn for 8 hours the entire day and then talked about how we felt afterwards about it. That was fun.
But I think about that too, because the funny thing is about that, we all watched that together, but like half of the class was crying just because of how emotional it was for everybody. And just to know that we felt so comfortable being in a room and being able to watch that with everybody. And I think about that a lot too. It's crazy.
Yeah, it feels like yesterday, but also feels like that program was so long ago.
Yeah, I agree. That was when we could do stuff in person, right?
I know. Yeah, different times now for sure. So but yeah, I want the listeners to kind of hear about your story. They've heard plenty about my story in sex therapy, but how did you land in this field?
So, I think for a lot of people in sex therapy, I took a similar course, where this wasn't exactly where we planned on being, but it ended up being where we are. I started my undergraduate career thinking I wanted to be a nurse, decided very quickly that was not for me. Jumped into general psychology classes and found out that was something that I was really interested in. So after those general psychology classes is when you started to kind of really get in depth into the specific courses. And so I took a sex and gender course with Dr. Silky, shout out in Lynchburg College. She's absolutely fabulous. And that was where I really felt like this is what I wanted to do. So she presented like abnormal relationships to us, right? She talked about polyamory. She talked about open non-monogamy relationships. We did interviews with people that were, in non-monogamous relationships and talking about that. And she presented her own information about it. So that class was just awe-inspiring for me and something that I felt really comfortable with. And so after taking that course and talking to her, she suggested doing marriage and family therapy. And so that's when I decided to apply to all the graduate schools that I did. I ultimately ended up at Nova Southeastern University, which is in Fort Lauderdale, getting my master's in marriage and family therapy. That took about 2 years. And once again, it was those courses in there that were just general, but the one that stood out to me the most was the sex and gender course. So talking about sex a little bit more in depth and how that impacts a lot of relationships and clients that we potentially would be seeing. So I knew ultimately from there, that's where I wanted to go. And as you're aware, once you leave graduate school, we can't really do everything right away. Kind of have to lay some groundwork. I worked for a nonprofit agency for over 5 years, working general mental health. Tried to incorporate as much marriage and family therapy and sex therapy as I could with that population, but it didn't really get to see too much of it. And then, once I felt comfortable, that's when I decided to apply for Michigan, and that's where we met. Obviously, we know that program was beneficial for all of us, and it was fabulous just to be able to sit in a room, like we mentioned, with so many people that had common interest and just wanted to be there for people and just normalize this idea of talking about sex in our society. So after we graduated, like you said, now it's a couple years ago, I ultimately stayed with a nonprofit for a little while, and then decided that it was just something I couldn't hold off any longer. And I found a private practice. I'm here in Cincinnati, Ohio. So in Cincinnati, I found a private practice that is for sex and relationship therapy. Her name's Emma Schmidt. She started the practice herself in 2012. Since then, it's now grown to her, myself, and 2 other therapists as well. So we are a group practice, and we see ultimately, individuals and couples and families, anybody that's really struggling with relationship issues and concerns. But we do definitely promote a lot of the sex therapy side of things. Trying to provide as much education as possible. So that's where I'm at right now, seeing individuals, couples, families, every single day, working through therapy and trying to provide as much education for sex therapy as I possibly can.
Yeah, that's incredible. I'm glad that you mentioned that you're in Cincinnati too. As you know, that's where the home office is for Pure Romance. And so I have a lot of listeners in the Cincinnati area. So you might be getting some calls after this episode for sure. So what are the primary things that you work with people on in your practice?
So we see a variety, to be honest with you. So my license, I have an independent license in marriage and family therapy in the state of Ohio, as does one of our other therapists in our group. And then we have professional clinical counselors, so we know we have all these different licensures for people that are therapists. So I would say I have a tendency to gravitate more towards the couple side of things because of my license being in marriage therapy. So we see a lot of couples. I see a lot of people who are married or not married, or just the idea of marriage isn't something for them. I see non-traditional relationships as well. I have a handful of polyamory relationships that I see in couples that come in to see me, or even just non-monogamy. So that's a lot of the clients that we see, a lot of individual clients, fairly even between genders. If we're speaking of just, the traditional male and female, I'd say maybe, pretty even, to be honest with you. A lot of men or a lot of women coming in for any sexual health dysfunction. So we do partner with a sexual health practice in Cincinnati called Her MD. Dr. Somi Javed is the owner and practitioner. So we partner with them because we do have a lot of women coming in with sexual health dysfunction and sexual health concerns. And that includes like pain during penetrative sex, maybe lack of desire or low interest in engaging in kind of sexual intercourse with their partners. So a lot of times we will make sure that we focus on the physical side of things as well as the mental too. We want to make sure that they're getting both components if they're coming in for any kind of sexual health concerns. So
when you say the physical side of things, because I think that's something that people might not think of when they're experiencing something, or I guess maybe it's 50-50. Is this something physical or is this something mentally related, and why I'm experiencing this issue? So when you say the physical component, what sorts of things would that encompass?
So this is my favorite thing to do with clients, and I'm sure you can agree. It's just the educational side of things. Like when someone comes in, when I'm thinking of like a female client, she's coming in and she's saying, hey, I'm having, trouble being interested in having sex with my partner. I just don't know where it's coming from. It's, I just can't find it, and then you jump into the physical side of things just to, double check to make sure everything's okay. And you ask the question, hey, are you experiencing any pain during intercourse? And they're like, yeah. And they say it so nonchalantly and like as if it's a normal thing. And, so I love the educational side of things to be able to say, hey, you know what? That's not normal. Like, your body is just meant to experience pleasure, not pain. And so to provide that educational piece, I think is amazing. So a lot of women experience pain during intercourse and they don't recognize that that's not normal, or they're told maybe by previous doctors or their upbringing that you're supposed to do it, right? Or you're just supposed to endure it. And so that can be really frustrating, but I think that's a core piece that a lot of women come in. So if they are experiencing pain of any sort, penetrative or non-penetrative, maybe they're experiencing endometriosis, but they don't really know what it is or what it looks like, how that could obviously influence your sexual desire. So those are pretty common things that we experience in regards to the physical side of things, which we will then refer out. Vaginismus, I would say, it might be something that's very common, which is like the involuntary, muscle contraction around your vulva opening. So a lot of women might experience that. So with that, I would say that's probably definitely a mind to body connection, right? Both mental and physical when it comes to something like that. That's kind of involuntary. But there is a lot of physical health dysfunctions out there that I don't think a lot of women are aware of. They assume it's just something that they have to experience the rest of their life. So for them to come in and to express their concerns and to recognize that it's not normal and to recognize that there are solutions and there are like things that they can do for it. I just love being able to see like the spark in their eye to recognize them that there's hope, that they don't have to continue to experience this,
Yeah, it's like that light bulb moment, and I 100% agree with you too. It's the education piece is the major thing that people are lacking. That's one of the reasons why I started this podcast, in fact, because when I started doing peer romance parties and presenting this educational piece at my parties, it's like women were mind blown at the information that I was delivering to them, and then they'd get in the private ordering room, the floodgates open, they become very vulnerable and share and ask a lot of very personal questions. And that's why ultimately I went back to UofM to get that component of sex therapy. But it is, our education system fucking sucks, and especially when it comes to sexual health. And that a lot of times I know exactly what you're meaning when you say you see that spark in their eye, and letting somebody know specifically that pain is common, but it's not normal. And for anybody listening to this, speaking up to a doctor, to a gynecologist, to express that this pain is happening. And now there are people out there that actually specialize in this and that can actually help talk through, if it's not just a physical thing, talk through the emotional and the physiological side of it.
That's the biggest thing too, is I would say, even if obviously you're up in Michigan and I'm down in Cincinnati and Ohio, but it's even if you're not in one of those two areas, there, like you mentioned, there's so many people that are specializing in that now. You look back at our cohort at Michigan and the amount of nurses or nurse practitioners that were in our cohort were available, right? So I think that piece is starting to be a little bit more normalized, that sexual health can be its own separate, physical thing that somebody can specialize in as a nurse or as a gynecologist. So they are out there, right? Sometimes you might have to do your research a little bit to see maybe where they're at. Unfortunately, too, doing research in regards to insurance, I think, is always a huge impact too for a lot of people. But yeah, they're out there. And I think that it's amazing to know that there are multiple solutions to any physical health concerns that women are experiencing. So like you mentioned, just being able to speak up and talk to your doctor about it. Or if you feel like your current doctor is dismissing you, then, go find a therapist, find a sex therapist that can, be there for you and support you and provide their own referrals, just find a way to make it work, because obviously our goal as sex therapists and any doctor specializing in sexual health dysfunction is to create pleasure and for us not to have to experience these things. So we're out there, but you just gotta sometimes maybe do the research a little bit.
Yeah. And I found that in the last year or so, engaging more in Instagram as a social media platform, using Instagram as a search engine to find different advocates in this, and searching things like sex therapy, sex coaching, sexuality education, sex education, you will find so many things. And one thing that I think came out good of 2020 was the fact that you can do this one from a virtual side of things. You don't necessarily need to be in person. So even if you're doing your research to try to find somebody, most people are going to offer a free consultation call to even see if you like them or if even they're a good fit for what you're looking for. But often even asking if they're out of state, do they work with a virtual component, because that is a huge shift that our world is seeing now, and especially in healthcare.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's been very helpful. For us in Cincinnati, we're in the tri-state area, so Indiana and Kentucky and Ohio. It's been amazing throughout this time, so that we can do a lot of virtual sessions. A lot of the licensing they're starting to kind of not regulate as much, and they've been able to allow people to do virtual sessions across state border, which has been fantastic. So I agree, that even if maybe you can't find it where you're at, that there's probably always another option available and doing it virtually. And trying to advocate for yourself, I think, is the biggest one.
Yeah, definitely. So you mentioned you work a lot with people experiencing pain during sex. What would you also mentioned the desire component. So what sorts of things would you say or suggest to somebody that feels that they're struggling with desire? If we're speaking directly to women, as this podcast is mostly women listening.
Yeah. Like you mentioned earlier, I think the mind to body connection, right? So is it our mind or is it our body? Like, which one came first? And I think that's always the struggle, the chicken or the egg. And I'm here to say that I don't think it matters which one came first. I think, but working on them both simultaneously can be very helpful and kind of almost powerful, I think, for a lot of women to say, like, hey, I'm in sex therapy and I'm going to see a doctor for this. And I think that kind of creates a really good sense of power for women and for our body to just take control, right?
Yeah.
But if there's like some, lack of desire for women, there's a book I recommend that our practice recommends to just about all of our clients. It's called Come As You Are, which I know you've read and you probably recommend it for a lot of clients. But I think the biggest thing I get out of that and why I recommend it to my clients is because we neglect to realize the external factors that influence our desire.
Yes.
Right? We're told so often, and society has told us so often, that we should just be ready and go, and like, or it should be spontaneous, right? Or, we should just know, or, we should do it at nighttime. That's a huge one.
Yeah.
So we're given certain criteria to do it at certain times or to do it in a certain type of way. And that can be really frustrating because that sticks with us. Even if we recognize that, like, hey, that's not normal, it still sticks with us in our mind a little bit, right? So it's going to influence us in some way, shape, or form. So Come As You Are does a great job. Emily Nagoski does a great job of explaining external factors, all these external stressors that could be creating a lack of desire for you, right? It could be something as simple as like clothes on the bedroom floor, right? Maybe having a messy bedroom. Maybe the shades are drawn. Maybe the sun's shining through. Maybe you can hear the faucet dripping in the bathroom. Maybe you can hear the dogs barking. Like, all of those things might create just a lack of desire for you because it's distracting, right? Or your mind's not really in the moment. You're not being in the moment. Something as simple as like sitting in traffic in the morning could create a lack of desire for a sexual interest in the evening, which I think baffles a lot of people, that something so simple that happens during the day can have a huge impact on how we feel in the evening. So I would encourage anybody that's having a struggle with like low desire or interest to identify these things for yourself, right? What are some of these things that, are contributing to this lack of desire for yourself throughout the day, right? And once we know those things, then we know we can do something about them, right? So then we can kind of adjust our lifestyle around them, or we can just kind of like adapt to when we're going to be sexually intimate. So if we know the nighttime's not a good idea for us because we're exhausted and we're stressed and we have a hard time relaxing after work, then let's try to maybe initiate sexual interest or sexual intercourse in the morning when our day's just getting started, so that we're not having to have those external factors that contribute to how we feel. So I think that is a huge component for a lot of women that have lack of desire, is recognizing that it has nothing to do really with you. It has so much more to do with everything going on around you, right? That's influencing how we feel.
Yeah. And that is so powerful for so many people to hear, because immediately when something is not working how we think it should be, we often turn to ourselves, right? We think that something's wrong with us. We blame ourselves. And I love that you mentioned that it is very much a lot of the external factors that most of the time we can control, or if you're, like you said, able to identify it, to work towards controlling and, incorporating your partner into that conversation and letting them know that, hey, this is what I need to happen. This is what cannot be happening if you're one to get it on, essentially. So please set the scene from here on out. And I love that you recommended that book too. I often talk about that book, but it's always great to hear it from somebody else. And I'm also a big advocate of the workbook. So for somebody that's listening, struggling with desire, the workbook itself is amazing to help you identify those exciters and blockers that she mentions, for sure.
Yeah. And you mentioned talking about your partner, right? Incorporating your partner in this discussion. So if you're talking about a traditional heterosexual couple and you have a male and a female and they're married, you want to do your best to talk to your partner about these things. I always say, hey, this book is geared towards women, but I don't see anything wrong with having your partner read it too. right? Or at least going over it with them, right? At the end, they have, some really good criteria. And so then maybe just reading that through with your partner. Because if your partner doesn't know these external factors and these stressors that are creating this lack of desire, then they won't know when not to try to initiate, right? Yeah. I think there's this sense of disappointment from partners when we try to initiate sexual intercourse and our partner's not interested. There's a sense of disappointment, or did we do something wrong, right? And you don't have to feel that way if you know what those external factors are, right? So you'll know when to initiate and you'll know when not to initiate when things are going on around us, right? So I think that helps that sense of frustration that I think a lot of couples find themselves in, or that negative cycle that a lot of couples find themselves in, is if we're aware what turns our partner on and what allows that desire to happen, then I think that it creates a little bit more success for couples.
Yeah, it's basically like you're creating a handbook for your sexual self. And sure. Yeah, I love any sort of handout or anything that you can literally do it makes it so easier to share, so much easier to share with a partner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
In your practice with sex therapy and the clients that you're working with, is there anything that you can identify that people do that they will then see quicker results in their work or better results in their work?
Talk about it. And I think that's what therapy's for, right? But I think that, so many people are truly shocked that once they join therapy, once they're in, even just 1 or 2 sessions, just being able to normalize the conversation about sex can go a really long way, right? Don't quote me on these statistics because I'm not exactly sure maybe if they're completely accurate, but I do know general sense that relationships report higher successful sexual relationship if they're talking about it. And I think that that's extremely important, right? So the biggest thing that I feel like people notice, the first thing that they notice a lot of times when they come to therapy is, wow, this is the first time I've actually talked about this. Yeah. This is the first time that I've even told this to my partner, that I'm having a lack of desire, right? This is the first time I've even told my partner I'm experiencing pain. And sometimes, obviously, for us as therapists, that can be baffling because maybe they've been in a relationship for 20 years. I think the biggest change that we can see happen, and if we want to see something happen right away, is to be able to talk about it, right? Not be, try our best not to be fearful of what we're going to talk about or what people's reactions are going to be. You'd be baffled probably to know that there are plenty of friends or family members or coworkers that probably are experiencing very similar situations to what you're experiencing. And if you just open that door even just a little bit for those people to talk about it with you or to just process how you're feeling about it, that can go a long way. That's probably the biggest first step into making change or wanting to see progress within a relationship.
Yeah. And I think I can speak for many therapists, at least therapists that I know and I've worked with before. It's like you cannot really say anything, especially when it comes to sex therapy, that is going to shock us, right? It's like, and I think that's oftentimes when people are like, okay, how are they going to react when I say this? Or will I be judged or anything? And that's the beautiful thing about sex therapy is that we normalize essentially all things regarding sex, and we see it as a beautiful and it's it's our birthright to experience that. We're sexual beings. That's just the way that we're born. So just anybody that's thinking of even tapping in and reaching out to a therapist for sex related things, know that's what they're there for. You're essentially not going to shock anything. And I love that it's 2 or 3 sessions in, and they're like, the sentence, I've never told anybody that before. Oh my gosh, like this is so much easier than I thought it was. And we're not mind readers as well, so we don't know if you don't tell us, and we don't know what you're thinking or what you're struggling with on that day-to-day basis if you don't open up and share. So for sure, talking.
I think the interesting part too is I don't know about you, but a lot of times for me too, I have clients that'll be like, is it okay if I say penis? And I'm like, yes,
please,
it is okay. You're allowed to use whatever word you want to use. But I would highly recommend calling it a penis for sure, or calling your vagina or your vulva or whatever. And that's a fun thing too, is right, being able to educate a lot of women on their anatomy, and that can be really fun too. But so if you're thinking about going to see a sex therapist, you can use whatever words you want to, and we will not be offended. And we've heard it all, that's for sure. And I think that's another funny thing too, is I start to notice seeing clients that once they start talking about it, that hesitation starts to go away, and they're able to talk about it more freely. those words like penis or vagina aren't as, scary anymore, and that just kind of starts to feel a little more comfortable.
Yeah, I love that. And if you shared a few resources, but as we're closing here, are there any other resources that you could give to somebody that's looking to either tap into sex therapy or just learning more for their own sexual health education?
Mm-hmm. Sure. So, like you mentioned, there are a handful of, obviously, your podcasts that they're listening to now, and other educational podcasts that are out there, or just following social media and Instagram. Feminist Chick is fantastic. The Vagina Blog is fantastic. Those are both women that I follow on social media that I find to be really interesting and provide a lot of really good education. Obviously, you can go to the ASECT website, so American Association for Sexual Educators, Counselors, and Therapists. You can go to their website, and then they do have a search engine where you can just search your area to figure out who is certified as a sex therapist or educator or counselor. So if you're looking for somebody in your area, then you can always go to that website. Even contact your insurance company, so the phone number on the back of your insurance card. Call them and say, hey, this is what I'm looking for. Is there anybody that's covered, or is there anything in the area that you're aware of? That's another really good option. When it comes to sexual health, your physical sexual health, so trying to find a doctor or a nurse or gynecologist that specializes in sexual health dysfunction. Once again, I would say the biggest recommendation would probably go to the ASECT website for sure, to see if there's anybody that's registered on there. And kind of just doing your own research on Google. I know that my practice, we have a social media following. We also do blog posts. And we also kind of make sure that we're triggering certain words within, our website and things like that. So when people do search sex therapy, then they're going to be directed to us right away.
Yeah.
So there's no harm in just Googling stuff too, as much as possible. Mm-hmm. And then there's a handful of books out there. Like I said, Come As You Are is probably the biggest one that I recommend for a lot of women. It's a very easy read and hilarious as well. So It makes it fun. So those would be probably the top ones that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
And the Gottman cards. Do you
yes.
ever recommend those?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Those are fun because I think they promote good, normal conversation like we were talking about, right? Normalizing conversation about sex. They have card decks you can just flip through, gives you suggestions of things you can talk about, questions you can ask one another, talking about sex, mild, medium, and spicy. So Julie and John Gottman are fantastic as well when it comes to couples and relationships, but also sex therapy too.
Yeah. I love that, and I'll definitely make sure to link all of those in the show notes so people can easily access them. Well, this has been very awesome, very informational. Thank you again so much for coming on. Mm-hmm. If somebody is wanting to speak directly to you, how do you prefer that they find you?
So Emma Schmidt and Associates, so you can go to emma-schmidt.com. So it's EMMA-Schmidt, which is SCHMIDT.com. That's our website. And then you can go there and you can have all of our information available. You can have our phone number to contact our office manager, or getting a hold of us through our emails are on there. So you can just go to our website and look up any information. We have a lot of good psychoeducation on there, as well as information to try to get a hold of us.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Danielle. I again appreciate you. This was super fun. It was great to connect with you, and I'm so thankful that we were able to meet each other in the program, and that you are out there still on the front lines doing this work, and I know changing and helping so many people with their sexual lives. So I appreciate the work you're doing.
Yeah, thank you very much. I feel the same way back to you. Very proud of you.
All right, y'all. Until next time, stay sexy, and remember to reach out to your healthcare professional if you are experiencing anything that you feel is not normal in your sexual life, because there are people like Danielle out there to help you. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you loved it, be sure to subscribe so you never miss a thing. And if you loved it so fucking much, be sure to leave a 5-star review. I'll see you next week, and until then, keep owning your sexual self.